Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the 2-hour transfer deadline day special of the Get French Football News Show. We'll be here until the close of the window to bring you the latest comings and goings before business is finished in France at 11 p.m. GMT. We have plenty of guests to give their insight this evening, but luckily for you, there isn't a yellow tie in sight. Before we get started, here's Eric Devine with the latest transfer news so far on deadline day.
Thank you, Nathan. We're among one of the busiest sides today, signing PSG left-back Youssouf Sabaly on loan for this season, as well as central defender Loic Kana from Lazio. Meanwhile, their central defender Papi Djilobodji has gone to Chelsea on a permanent deal. Well, Lyon have likewise been busy, signing young midfielder Olivier Kemen and selling Yassine Benzia to Lille. Mario Lamela has completed a move to Juventus from Olympique Marseille, while Jean Fernando Quintero has moved to Rennes on loan for the season with an option to buy. Paolo De Cieli has joined Marseille from Juventus, going the opposite direction of Lamela. Ronnie Rodelin has moved from Lille to Caen. And Mikael Lebehan, Ligue 2's leading scorer last season, has joined Nice from Le Havre. And Florian Raspuntino has moved to Bastia. That's all of the recent deals going through today. And we're just seeing now that Jason Denayer, who had been linked with Olympique Marseille on several occasions, has left the club to join Galatasaray on loan.
Right, excellent. Thank you, Eric. And as you are listening tonight, please keep track of our Twitter feed and our excellent work done by all our dedicated team on our website tonight. All the links are in the description of this video. Eric will be giving us updates throughout the evening as deals go through. And also here, as always, is Philippe Bargil. But we do have a special guest joining us early tonight. He's written for the likes of ESPN, beIN Sports USA, Bleacher Report, and Yahoo Sports. It's Jonathan Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Hi there, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely delighted to have you here with us. We have to talk about the potential deal of the day so far that's been rumbling all morning, afternoon, and evening. Anthony Martial looks close to a deal to Manchester United, a fee reported to be around £36 million, bound 50 million euros. Jonathan, what do you think to that deal if it goes through?
I'm hugely surprised. I mean, it's not a surprise that clubs are interested in Martial. You know, we've known for a number of seasons now that he is one of, French football's brightest young talents. I think having seen him, since he moved to Monaco, and I'm sure we all probably agree that, he is going to develop into one of the best players that the Ligue 1 has produced in recent seasons. However, the money on offer at the moment, whether it's the 50 million euros or whether it's as high as some of the other more far-fetched prices that we've seen quoted around and bandied around online today, like 80 million euros, it is a huge amount of money to be spending on somebody who's not yet turned 20. Now, there is plenty of potential there, so you can see why clubs are interested. It's the right time to go to Monaco now with a proposal for a transfer. With them being out of the Champions League, certain players already moved on, Kazawa, Abdinor, but I think Martial is a bit more surprising than those two, considering the importance that Monaco placed on him going into this season. It's believed that Leonardo Jardim said that the one player he wanted to be absolutely unsellable this season was Martial. There were some rumours that he would leave earlier on in the summer, and then those looked to have been killed off by the fact that he signed a new contract. But then to see Manchester United come in now and make a bid this big, it's a real shock, and it definitely feels like a panic move on their part. And as somebody who really wants to see Martial develop really well and become the player that I think we all believe that he can be in future, I'm really concerned about the pressure that moving for such a price and at such a time during the transfer window is going to heap on the player.
Philip, what do you think to the deal? It is a 19-year-old going for almost 35. Well, it's would be potentially the most expensive transfer for a teenager ever. What do you think to the deal?
Well, I think it's a pretty great window. Monaco might be ending with what was Kurzawa leaving for 25 million and euros, that is, and Martial leaving for potentially 80 million. Lyon chairman Jean-Michel Aulas just said that if this deal, Martial to Manchester United for 80 million euros, is going to go ahead, they're going to get back 10 million as a sell-on fee. So it is silly money, but I do understand that Manchester United, if we're looking at it from purely a Manchester United sense, they only have Rooney up front. I think they loaned Chicharito today. I read something.
That was a sale, I think. He sold to Leverkusen, yeah.
And that's definitely it's not a loan. It's definitely
it's a confirmed transfer. That one.
Rooney is basically Manchester United's only striker, so you can understand Manchester United for going for a centre forward, quite desperately, quite very late in the window, again Martial, he's lots of potential. Hasn't shown, hasn't confirmed or confirmed this potential yet, and it's an amazing amount of money to be spending it on, I think Monaco will stick to this strategy. I mean, they didn't really go for a left back when Kurzawa was sold to PSG, and now I don't really see them having the time to buy another centre forward, so they'll just have to stick with Carrillo up front, or maybe do some kind of a system with a false nine, or something, having like El Shaarawy playing up top. So it's a great financial deal for Monaco, but they're really telling everybody else they're not being too ambitious with this season, selling all these great players.
Eric has some news. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, just receiving word that Marseille are signing Eric Lamela, currently of Tottenham Hotspur, formerly of Roma, on loan for the season with an option to buy at season's end. He's had kind of a tough time at Spurs so far, and maybe this could be his new chance.
Oh, interesting deal there. Jonathan, quick reaction. What do you think to Lamela to Lyon?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how he does. He's a very capricious talent, somebody who hasn't really lived up to expectations since he arrived at Spurs. I think that he is a player who might settle into the surroundings at Marseille. Perhaps might thrive better than he has done in London. But this is a player who just blows so hot, so cold. With somebody like that already in the team, Campos, I can't really see what Marseille are gaining in bringing Lamela in, to be honest. But having said that, I think everyone will remember how fantastic he was when he was at Roma, and how fantastic he has been in brief moments for Spurs. So if Michel can get a little more consistency out of him, then sure, it'll be a really exciting signing.
He's very much a stop-start kind of player. You just never know what's going to be, what's he going to be with Lamela. Sometimes he's going to be fantastic. Sometimes he's just not be unrecognizable. Really, the game would fly right above his head. So it's a bit of a risk, but Marseille do need to strengthen after all.
Yeah, it's an interesting deal, and we'll probably come back to that later when we're joined by Muhammad Ali later this evening. We'll talk about PSG's window while we've got you here, Jonathan. We haven't seen too many departures, but there's been some really key additions in the likes of Kevin Trapp, Layvin Kurzawa, and obviously Angel Di Maria. How would you rate this transfer window for them?
Yeah, I'd say that it's been a largely, very impressive transfer window for PSG. I think the players that they've brought in are the right kind of players. They've been chasing Di Maria for a while to finally get their man. They'll be absolutely delighted with that. Looking at the way that he's, immediately, hit the ground running with the assist for Lavezzi's goal against Monaco. He'll be pleased with that. He'll feel, like he's acclimatizing more and more every day. And I'm sure Blanc will be absolutely delighted to have seen him, pull that sort of. A piece of amazing skill out of his hat on his debut. The addition of Kurzawa is good. I think he's an upgrade on Dean. It's a shame to see the way that Dean sort of stagnated really at PSG in the 2 seasons he was there. I'm not convinced that Roma are going to buy him permanently. I think it's a very big transfer fee to ask Roma to pay up for at the end. But if he plays regular first team football, he gets himself back in the French national team, then he could come back to PSG a stronger player, or they could sell him somewhere else. next summer. But that's one to watch. But looking at all of the moves altogether, I think Di Maria is a positive move. Kazar was a positive move. Trapp has been very impressive so far. I can see why Blanc prefers him to Sirigu. I think PSG's treatment of Sirigu is harsh, don't get me wrong about that, but I do think that Trapp is better in the air than Sirigu, and he is better with the ball at his feet as well, so I can see the logic in that move. I think PSG perhaps just could have played it a little better with Sirigu and given him more of a chance, because they've basically closed the door to him and said, you're not wanted here anymore. We'd rather you found a new club, which I think is very dismissive of a player who has been very good value for them over the last couple of years, especially when you bear in mind how little they paid on him in the first place. And that comes on to the last edition of the transfer window, Benjamin Stambouli. I think that he is also another positive transfer. Now, I know a lot of people look at it and say, oh, it's not an upgrade on Yohan Cabaye. Cabaye can be a fantastic player. He has a lot of ability. He was superb when he was at Newcastle, and hopefully he'll get back to a similar level of performance. However, his time at PSG was very underwhelming. Yes, injuries contributed massively towards his failure at PSG. However, I also feel that his mentality, his attitude wasn't right for the sort of position that he was in the squad. I think he knew what the deal was with PSG when he arrived, and I feel like he sort of just gave up on breaking into that starting 11 and trying to prove himself after a certain point, and from then on it just became an inevitability that he would leave. And for me, Stambouli is not like that. Stambouli has a much more determined attitude. He's a real fighter. And I think that he'll seize every opportunity that he's given by Blanc to impress. And I think that PSG will get more out of him playing the same role that Cabaye was playing in the last couple of seasons than they got from Cabaye himself, even though Cabaye is arguably the more talented player.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about Stambouli there. Philip, carry on. What do you think to the window?
I certainly agree with Jonathan about Kevin Trapp. Having watched quite a lot of Sirigu last season, a bit of Kevin Trapp this season, he really is very, very good when with the ball at his feet, which is really quite uncommon for a goalkeeper. Last night, David Luiz and Thiago Silva sometimes probably took unnecessary risks when they had the ball, and they are centre backs. But whenever they put the ball back to Trapp, there were some not so easy balls, but he just makes it look so easy. That's the first point. The second point is, yes, it's just you can just see it. He's just better than Sirigu in the air. He's very assured when he takes the ball. So it's quite logical to see him start. As for comings and goings, so as it stands, Sirigu is still at the club and Duches is still at the club. So we have Cabaye who left. He made an interview at a French program, saying that some of the players didn't want him here. So that's maybe an indication of why he wasn't feeling so well at PSG. He's been replaced by Stambouli, who will be given, I think, a squad role, which is perfect. I think is perfectly fine for him. It's a role he had at Spurs, and he'll be able to play parts of games at a pretty big season. So that's good for him. Di Maria has basically shown us what he can do last night. He replaced Lucas. Lucas, who's a player who's really into running at players and extremely good at it. What Di Maria did yesterday was absolutely superb in terms of passing and vision. I think it was his first touch of the ball was a cross to Cavani, which was basically a goal-scoring opportunity to make it to I think it was 3-0. But it's just so good with the ball at his feet, but the passing side of the game. So it really gives PSG another dimension, which is extremely interesting. I'm still not sure if I want him to play central midfield or on the wing if he's more dangerous in that position. And in the end, Kurzawa. I mean, I felt last night the right side of PSG. So you had Aurier, who had a fantastic first half, and Lucas Moura, who always performs on that right wing. And to me, I thought, if Maxwell is having an off day, Kurzawa could play left back, but also Kurzawa could also play left wing. I mean, I can perfectly see him doing that, which is maybe not his natural position, but it really is some kind of an option that is available to Blanc, and if he can take his opportunity, I think Kurzawa could start more games than we actually saw. We talked about that with Eric, thinking if Kurzawa goes to PSG, he's never going to play. But there you have some kind of an opportunity for him to play not only at left back, and so that changes everything because you never saw Dean playing on left wing.
Yeah,
So
it's an interesting point for that.
Yeah, I think it could be good for him for Kurzawa because unfortunately for most of Liga, I don't think there's going to be much of a contest for the Liga trophy this season. But most games will be won on paper, so Kurzawa won't be able to express himself. So I really hope he does play at least half the league games and be given not only be given a chance in the cup games or and whatnot, and also play a bit at Champions League, a bit against Real Madrid, a bit against Donetsk.
And then hopefully we'll get a bit of a chance, Philip. I agree with you. Jonathan, just very quickly, the additions that PSG have made this summer, does this give them a real chance at the Champions League with the depth they now have?
Yeah, I definitely think it does. I mean, you look at the starting 11. The starting 11 stronger with Trapp in it, with Di Maria in it. And they've got a bit more depth as well. I mean, one thing that you can't really predict, certainly at this early stage in the season, is how PSG are going to be doing. Certainly, in the latter stages. I mean, yeah, they've drawn Real Madrid in the group stage, so it's not guaranteed that they'll be able to finish top. But I do think they'll be one of the top two teams in the group. So I do think they'll be going on to the latter stages. And then the big question then is, what condition will the players be in? Will there be sort of fatigue-related injuries popping up like there were last season? I don't think that'll be that much of a problem. So the biggest issue with PSG, I'm certainly thinking of players like Marco Verratti, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. When I say this, is going to be suspensions, and assuming that PSG don't have an abundance of injuries or suspensions to deal with, then I think that they have enough strength and depth to go very far in the Champions League. I think that PSG have performed almost the perfect transfer window for them. The one thing that I would criticise them for is I think that they've some of the loan moves that they've sanctioned. I don't particularly agree with. I think that Habron to Laval, I think he could have gone on loan to a Ligue 1 side. I think Ongenda needed to be the player that was sent out on loan to perhaps to Ligue 2 to give him at least a shot at trying to prove that he has some kind of future in Paris. And at the end of the transfer window now, it looks like it's going to be Ongenda who stays and has sort of that squad role to play in the Champions League as one of the homegrown players when you've got somebody like Habron playing for Laval, and I'm not really sure how much he's going to gain from another season in Ligue 2, thinking towards the future for PSG. So I think that in terms of the players they brought in, absolutely fantastic, but I just would question some of the loan moves that have been made, with the exception of Areola, who I think has made the perfect loan move going to Villarreal, because I think it's going to give him the ideal platform to sort of build himself up and get himself to a level where he can come back and challenge Kevin Trapp next summer.
Very quickly before you leave us, Jonathan, tonight, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. What do you think is the best deal in Liga this season so far in the transfer window?
Oh, that is.
I thought it was a cheeky one.
Yeah, there's. You know what? I'm a big fan of the Mathieu Valbuena signing by Lyon. I think that is very, very shrewd, looking at the amount of money that Lyon paid to get him. I think that if it all clicks with with him, Lacazette and Fekir, I think that Lyon will be absolutely sublime to watch. And for me, just being a big fan of Valbuena, delighted to have him back in Ligue 1. So for that alone, I'm just going to say that is probably my favourite deal of the transfer window. But there have been quite a lot. It's disappointing to see so many talented players leaving for the Premier League this summer, but then to gain somebody back, like Valbuena was excellent, and it would have been really nice to have had someone like Younes Belhanda come back as well, but looks like that one's not to be. But it is just great to have Valbuena back all the same.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Jonathan. It's been excellent to have you on. If you want, follow him on Twitter. He's always excellent. It's @JohnLeGossett. Thank you again, Jonathan, for joining us, and have a nice evening.
Not a problem, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and I'll speak to you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Just before we carry on tonight, Eric, update, where are we transfer window-wise? Anything interesting happening?
Yassine Benzi has signed for Lille officially now. It's a 4-year contract, and hopefully gives the young attacker more of a chance to feature regularly. He had a hard time cracking that Lyon squad. Big things have been touted for him, but we'll see where this goes.
Interesting. Carrying on very quickly with PSG, Philip. Is there any deals that you were a little bit disappointed by, like Jonathan, the loan deals away?
I was actually expecting more of a reshuffle this summer because there was a lot of unrest. PSG were not very motivated on the field last season. And I did criticize their transfer window. I think it was 2 weeks ago. But looking back now, I mean, I don't know if we've got any last minute news about Motta, but it does look like he's staying. So which means that Di Maria has not been recruited to replace Thiago Motta. Di Maria has been brought to strengthen the midfield, which is a really, really good thing for the club. Like I said, his range of passing is absolutely superb. Even though it was against in the second half against Monaco side, but for his Liga and debut, I don't think I remember any player having such an immediate impact. So I'm quite happy that Thiago Motta is staying. He's a very good thing for the club. The other thing I wanted to point out was the two South Americans, so Cavani and Lavezzi, who have repeatedly said that they are not happy in Paris. They want to move away. It really does look like they're coming. It's all coming together. What with Cavani scoring a brace, playing probably, some perfectly great goals. Even though he did have a quite terrible first half, but his second half was probably one of his best he had for PSG. And while Lavezzi looks motivated, he looks a different player from last season. But that's hopeful for gives PSG hope for the Champions League and for winning the title. It's really coming together, I reckon.
Yeah, and just to confirm there, Thiago Motta signed a 1-year extension. I think it was about 2 days ago now. So okay. He was definitely staying. So that it was confirmed on his birthday. I'm not 100% certain, but it was very close at least. Okay. We're going to do a quick switcheroo now. Philip, you're going to go on the news for the next 15-20 minutes. Eric, I'm going to bring you in to chat about Lyon, who've had a very interesting window for the runners-up, who've shifted some players out, so NG in particular, but have managed to bring some real quality in, especially at the end. How would you assess their window, Eric?
I think that knowing the general mindset of Jean-Michel Aulas, that it was a rather exceptional window for Lyon. This team, throughout history, with the possible exception of a couple of years at the beginning of this decade, have always followed the mandate of Bernard Lacombe and Jean-Michel Aulas, the hierarchy there at Lyon, had always followed the buy low, sell high mandate in their transfer dealings. And I think that as integral as NG has been to the team, and as much potential as he has, and I think as much as he was able to sort of help Lacazette be successful last year, that price is kind of hard to ignore. So as much as I'm a little bit disappointed about seeing the player go, I do respect the approach that Aulas has taken this window. It's that same approach that had given Lyon so much success during that run of titles and that Champions League success when they were consistently quarterfinalists, round of 16, even the semifinals in 2009-10. So, you also might question him letting some of these younger players go. The likes of Zefan looked really effervescent in getting that goal and assist last week against his former team. Fares Belouli to Monaco, and now Benzia to Lille's been made official. But I think, as we're seeing with this sale of Martial to United, what Lyon have cleverly been doing with a lot of these younger players is inserting a very high sell-on clause. Benzia's fee is only €1 million, for example, but there's a 40% sell-on clause. So, perhaps seeing how some of these younger players have developed after leaving the club. Alassane Plea is another one who I think has improved considerably since leaving the team. There's a good amount of foresight on being placed by Jean-Michel Aulas in these dealings. Overall, I think that the club have done exceptionally well. I think the signing of Mapu Yanga Mbiwa is exceptional. I think it was going to be too easy for the likes of Milan Bisevac to get done for pace. Yes, Yanga Mbiwa had that sort of horrendous error in that game against Rennes, but I think that that's some nerves upon his return to France. He's proven himself to be, he's a very solid player, integral to Montpellier's winning the title. I think he gives a lot of necessary depth. They're probably going to let a center back go, but I think Yanga Mbiwa, you're going to need 3 or 4 quality center backs if you're going to compete on 3 or 4 fronts between European competition and the 2 domestic cups. I think the signing of Raphael is a really good one. He's not quite as direct going forward as Jallet can be, but I think that he's got proven experience, European competitions, and I think he's a really fine addition as well. Claudio Boviu, obviously, I think has shown himself to be a willing worker and to sort of get stuck in and work hard and track back the way that perhaps Lacazette isn't willing to do. And I think for the time being, honestly, we can see from Lyon's performance the weekend, yes, there was a bit of luck there, but perhaps operating with this front three of Valbuena, Fekir, and Bovu is going to be, an integral, first or second option. And I know that Lacazette's, we've talked about this last week. He's sort of a confidence player, but even if he comes back from his back injury at 100%, there's still going to be some questions surrounding his form. So until he can prove that, I think Lyon have a very potentially exciting front three with the arrival of Valbuena. Again, this is a player who's 31 years old. I'm not sure when his birthday is, but is going to be really motivated to retain his starting place for the European Championships next year. We can't underestimate that, how important he's going to be. And the other 3 signings that they brought in are Darder, Morel, and Toussaint. I think are all going to be really integral for squad depth. Morel can play, back up Berimo at left back and also be a center back if need be. Darder and Toussaint, I don't really know a whole lot about. I have to be honest about that, but I do know that for as wonderful and energetic as that midfield 3 of Ferry, Tolisso, and Gonalon has been, they can't play 60 games, 50 games that Lyon are going to be playing between all the competitions, assuming they hopefully do progress in the Champions League. Good depth, and I think that the confidence that this is going to give Fekir, it's apparent now that he's going to be the engine that makes this tick, whether it be by goals or assists. And I think we could be looking at the birth of a world-class talent on the part of Nabil Fekir, and that to me is the most exciting thing. That Lacazette's injured, maybe quote unquote, is this injury real? Is he suffering from a lack of form, a lack of confidence? As splendid as he was last year, for me, and I think for the approach that Fournier is taking, it doesn't really matter. I think that putting the focus on Fekir to lead this team forward is absolutely the right decision, and I think it's going to make for a really exciting season for the team.
I think what you mentioned there about the players they sold, Arsene Player and Anthony Martial with the clauses. I'm trying to imagine a strike force with Lacazette, Player, Fekir and Martial. That would have been utterly frightening, I think. Just to mention about Sergio Dada there, that you've not seen quite a bit of Emerick, but I think he's been fantastic for Malaga the last season especially. I know their fans are pretty disappointed with the amount of young players that have left their squad, but he's a very accomplished midfield player for his age. I think he's excellent on the ball. He's very aware of his positional sense, and he almost said that he was feeling a bit ill, worrying about the move to Lyon not happening for a brief time. But I think he's an excellent addition to an already quality young midfield. You look at Corentin Tolisso and Jordan Ferry, and the experience of Gonalon there as well. He's going to really grow, I think, as possibly maybe a future replacement for Gonalon in that sort of holding midfielder role, the slightly deeper position, or possibly sort of similar to a Tolisso. But I think his versatility will really add to a Lyon squad that's maybe lacking a little bit of depth in the middle of the park. Looking at some of their other deals that have gone through, the loss of Clinton and G, is that a really significant one that could come back to bite them, or do you think they've done the right kind of business to fill the gap, Eric?
Like I said, he brought the best out of Lacazette, but if this club is sort of recalibrating its focus around Nabil Fekir, I don't think it matters all that much. I think that the sort of interplay that you get and the dynamism and ability to draw fouls and be quick and run at players that front three offers on all counts, that being Bovu, Fekir, and Valbuena in Lacazette's absence, I think really mitigates what potential negatives there could be from NG's departure. Don't get me wrong, I think he could be a tremendous talent, but I think Olas has done incredibly well to get a good fee for him, and I don't think that they'll necessarily regret it. I think they've strengthened really well. And yeah, I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him stay, but at the end of the day, I think that you couldn't ignore that fee, considering he really only had one season of top-level football.
Yeah, and finally, Eric on Lyon. Do you think the deals they've made makes them stronger? Do you think they've got a chance at second place now with Monaco losing so many quality players?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if they can have the same sort of cohesion that they showed against Caen on Saturday, absolutely. It's been an uneven performance, trying to figure out Lacazette's situation, not in terms of both on the pitch and I think for his own mental state, I think has been sort of a hindrance to the team. As have just the simple fact of blooding in these new players, the likes of Bovu and Valbuena. But I think by and large, depth is what this team needed to be able to compete on two fronts. I think with the draw they've had in the Champions League group is, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's certainly, favorable for them. They have an excellent chance of getting through. So that being the case, yeah, absolutely. This team needed depth, and that's what they went out and got. These are the players that are coming in are either exciting new prospects or they're players who've done it at the top level. Even someone like the likes of a Jeremy Morel. I mean, I remember seeing him play against Arsenal several times in the group stage over the past 3 or 4 years. I think that was back in 2012, and he looked brilliant. He's not at the level of a French international, but he's a capable player with European experience. So if something happens to Bergamo, for example, Lyon have a backup, which is what they didn't have last year. It was a frightfully thin squad. They managed to avoid any significant injuries. But you can't count on that competing on two fronts. So I think they got depth and quality. That's really the bottom line here. So well done to Olas and company for what I think is an excellent transfer window.
And I've just seen news that Lyon look like they've sealed the deal for Olivier Kemen from Newcastle United, the young midfielder. That sounds like it could be another bit of good news, Eric. There's not much on him, really. He's been playing in the reserves in Newcastle, but could add a little bit extra. I know there's a lot hoped of him.
Yeah, no, I actually saw him a couple times. I believe over the summer in the under-19 championships. And yeah, I think that this is the kind of player who we look at the likes. It's a similar signing to say Lindsay Rose. They're sort of buying him at perhaps a bit of a cut rate, but the potential he has for growth, considering it's a relatively low fee, I think is really impressive. And he's been linked with the other clubs likes of Milan, so it's obvious that people see talent in him, that he could really have the potential to grow. And you know, I mean, Martial's another example. He wasn't a Lyon academy product per se. I think he was brought in at the age of 14 or 15. So Lyon had him for a couple of years, but not for his entire development. And sort of polishing some of these younger players, if you will, I think can really have a positive effect overall for Lyon, and they could do well to sell them on.
Well, thank you, Eric. We'll switch you back around now. Philip, was there any breaking news at the moment from our website?
There's been a couple of deals that have been made of lesser clubs. The most important news would be that Wissam Ben Yedder will not be leaving Toulouse this window, which is very good for Toulouse, who were lacking in firepower, so almost went down last season. What has been said before, what I meant by lesser deals was Matheus Doria, the Marseille defender, who I think is yet to actually play for the club. He's been on the bench a few times. He has been loaned to Granada. We have Julien Janvier from Lille, who has been loaned to Red Star for this season. Hasn't played that much for Lille, which is why he is being loaned. And we have Jason Denayer, who was linked with Marseille and is finally joining Galatasaray.
Excellent. And I've just seen that Marseille have confirmed that Mario Lamela deal that Eric was talking about earlier. It's Juventus on loan and a purchase option included. Don't have a fee at this moment in time, but another one out the Marseille door. But we will move on to another club that's seen quite a few go out of the door at the moment. Philip, Monaco. Off the top of my head, Ayman Abdennour, Layvin Kurzawa, Yaikfero Carrasco, and obviously on a slightly lesser note, Radamel Falcao on loan have gone out the door, but in come Stefan El Shouari, Fabio Contrao on loan, Thomas Lemar, and several other interesting signings. How would you rate Monaco's window so far?
Well, from a financial point of view, it's probably the best transfer window in history. I'm trying I'm looking over all those figures. It's absolutely amazing. Abdennour leaving for 30 million, Carrasco for 20. So that's 50 million from just two players. Then you have Kondogbia for 40, Kurzawa for 24, Ocampos for 7.5, and maybe Martial for we've had some fake Manchester United account saying 91 million euros. So this could go as high as 200 million euros in income this window, which is absolutely amazing. But you take Kurzawa away. You're on Wednesday evening. You're watching Monaco versus Valencia. You take Kurzawa out. And you take Martial out. You still got a pretty bright side. So you still have Subasic in goal. You still have Fabinho. You still have Cavallo, Raji. Abdennour did bring something really solid to the squad. He was absolutely amazing against Arsenal. And then you've got Pasalic, who came in. You've got Bernardo Silva, who had an amazing tournament this summer. You have Stefan El Shaarawy, you've got Ivan Caballero, and you've got Carrillo up front. It's just amazing that they still have a very more than decent starting 11 and bench. And for this reason, we talked about it with Eric last Monday. saying that they just will be able to rotate in the Europa League and do something very, very good. I'm thinking they're going to have quite a good season, and if they don't, they'll buy whatever is needed in January. So I think it's been a bright window. The strategy has been clearly defined, and the strategy is to buy cheap and sell extremely expensive. On the other hand, that defeat against Monaco did show that they not only did they sell quality players, they sold players that were extremely instrumental in the Champions League. Not having Kondogbia against Valencia showed. I mean, it just showed Monaco lacked pressure in the middle of the park, and this is what they'll be losing basically. So I don't know really where they will be ending this season, but I don't think it's going to be ridiculous. I don't think it's going to be mid-table or anything like that. I still think they're still up there with the best teams in Liga.
I think it'll definitely be interesting. Eric, you've got some news of some deals from Marseille.
Yeah, 2 deals from Marseille. Two Juventus players have gone the other way in that Lamela deal. Not necessarily contingencies, but Mauricio Isla, who spent, I believe, last year on loan at QPR, has joined the team for the season, and Paulo de Cilia, central defender, has joined the team on a permanent deal. Nice have also signed Ricardo Pereira, as a Brazilian from Porto, for a 2-season-long deal. Really trying to place focus on their attacking options, having already brought in Michael Lebehan and Valère Germain over the window. I think Nice are really looking primed to make a push for the top half of the table after their struggles last year.
Yes, very true. I think, Eric, and Mauricio Isla is an interesting one from my point of view. I think watching him at QPR last season, he didn't really have the most impressive of seasons in a team that was eventually relegated. Not sure quite what he's going to offer Marseille, in all honesty, for the amount of money he might have gone for, or at least in wages. But he has impressed with Chile before, and he has got quite a reputation. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. And talking about,
he'll start. We'll have to ask Mo about that. But he's up against Jadjidji, and I mean, he looked okay for QPR, but Jadjidji has been impressive last season. I'm not even sure he'll start.
No, it's an unusual one, and we'll definitely see how we do. And I can never say his name, the Italian Paolo how do you say it, Eric?
De Cilia? Is how I've heard it pronounced before?
Yes, he's a left back by trade. We're getting from, so he'll add a little bit, especially with Morel having left. Hopefully he might get a few games. I've heard I've not seen enough of him, but that will be an interesting one. But going back to Monaco, Philip, as we were talking, I think they've really had a quality window. I mean, they sold Levin Kurzawa earlier this week last week, to PSG, and straight away brought in a excellent signing. I thought of Fabio Contral on loan. I mean, it's not a downgrade in any sort. I wouldn't have thought, and that seems to be their method. It seems to be they let one go. Abdenor comes to mind, that they don't, and not maybe a ready-made replacement for him, but Kondogbia goes, there's Bakayoko there, Falcao goes, and they bring in the likes of Caballero and Carrillo. So they keep adding options to where they lose these other players, and I think whether it will fully work out or to a second place finish is maybe to be seen yet. But I think their transfer strategy is excellent. Do you think that the moves they've made makes them favourites for pushing PSG all the way, or do you think that Lyon have maybe caught them up in this window?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, a lot of things can happen in 1 hour and 16 minutes still. Even though I can't see the whole squad being changed again. I'm also surprised. I did forget about Contour joining. Yes, it's a great signing, and I'm not quite sure. I mean, obviously Marcelo is a left back at Real Madrid, but Coentrao is still a very very able left back and wing back. He's not up and coming like Kurzawa. He is older, yes, but it really is a great replacement for Kurzawa. And I don't know if that means that if Ishigile, sorry, is going to start every single game, or if Coentrao is going to start every single game, but they still have a lot of depth. One thing I would like to mention is about also the future, because it's not just about buying the players this summer, because they bought two players. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking about Corentin Jean. They bought him from Troyes, £4 million, and then they loaned him straight back, so he still plays for Troyes. And it's a good thing that they did, I think, because without that money, Troyes would not have been given the chance to play in Liga because of the very strict financial regulations in France. So Monaco did buy him for 4 million and loaned him straight back. And the other one is Saint-Maximin from Saint-Etienne, which they bought 5 million. And they have loaned him to Hanover, I think it is.
Hanover was the club, yeah.
And it's just just loaning these players are going to get a great match experience, and it's just this strategy. I mean, sell for 200 million and buy for what 30. Send half of them on loan. They'll be back great players, and they'll probably be able to make lots of profit on the sales on those players. And it's not like there's a big amount of pressure now. I mean, people will be disappointed that there won't be any challenge at the top this season. I am. I suppose every Liga fan will be as well. But there's never been that kind of pressure at Monaco to actually challenge for the title, and people just look at their management and their strategy and say, just respect for doing all this, all these amazing deals. And it's still, like I said before, it's still a pretty damn good 18 group of players, 18-20 group of players. So I can see them finishing in top. Maybe the same as last season with PSG, Lyon, and Monaco. But you are still, recuperating from a tough pre-season and have not started the season that well. I mean, they did win 4-0 at 4-0 at Caen. I mean, amazing game from Fekir. But they still have problems at the back, so I'm still really not sure where they'll end up. And you always have these kinds of surprises. God knows what kind of season Marseille is going to have.
Be an interesting one, won't it?
I just don't think Monaco will be that far off. They'll probably third, and they'll probably be extremely happy with third, and they'll probably get an easier draw in the Champions League if they do.
That would be the real hope, wouldn't it? I think. Eric, you've got some news about Monaco revealing maybe a fee for Martial.
Yeah, Canal Plus are reporting that it's 80 million euros for the player. Just a staggering amount for someone who's talented, but is again 19 years old and has played maybe somewhere on the order of 2,000 minutes in Ligue 1. This is it's quite the announcement if it is indeed true.
I think I come in here with the Manchester United point of view, don't I? It's a staggering amount, isn't it? I think there's obviously a need for Manchester United to have an extra striking option. I don't think he wants to play Wayne up front. I think he wants to play Wayne Rooney as a number 10 behind a striker. And Martial was sublime for me in the second half of the Liga season last season. And it's just a shame that my prediction for him becoming a Liga top scorer is definitely not going to come true now, because he's going to head to the Premier League. I don't think he'll be top scorer there, but I'm personally, disregarding the amount, I think he could be a really good signing for Manchester United. You think 19 years old, and we've all said, and Jonathan mentioned it earlier, that I think he's going to be one of the best players in that Liga have developed in the last couple of years, and he's going to be a really, really could go be a really top player, and it's the thing Manchester United need, I think. But at the same time, Monaco are losing a really quality striker that they maybe really could do with. They've not really set the world alight with goals at the moment, really, Eric. Is Caballero and Carrillo enough for them to enough firepower for them?
I don't think it's a matter of firepower. I think it's more of an issue of how this team play. Now, we've talked about the similarities between the likes of Thierry Henry, and Alexander Lacazette, and Anthony Martial sort of being the next in that succession of winger-turned strikers. So, he has a history of being this really dynamic player who can cut in from the wing, but also operate as a number 9, if need be. He's, skinny, but he's fairly physically robust. He's able to hold off defenders and the like. But his pace and his energy in that number 9 role were really integral to, that improvement that Monaco saw over, the last, the last 25 matches of the season last year. And, Carrillo has really impressed me so far this season. But that being said, he's a much more bulkier physical presence, and he's not this sort of, player who's going to gallop over a lot of space or, just nick the ball off a defender quickly. He's not, a more stationary target man, but he is sort of a more solid presence that's not going to give that dynamism to Monaco's front three that we saw last year with the likes of Ferreira, Carrasco, Silva, and Martial. That worries me a little bit, because I think that if Carrillo does become the starter week in, week out, Monaco are going to have to do some necessary adjustment to the way they play. They're not going to be able to hit teams on the counter as quickly with Carrillo installed as a striker. So perhaps we talked earlier about maybe Al Sharawi being a sort of a false 9 / winger. I think for me personally, something like that would be a better way to look forward in terms of the way that the team attack, particularly in European competition. I mean, for me right now, Monaco have as good of a chance as anybody to win that competition, and perhaps their placement in France won't matter as much. So yeah, I think that it's a troubling move. Again, like the sale of NG to Spurs, I understand. You can't turn that amount of money down, but the potential knock-on effects it has for the way that Monaco play when at their best, it really worries me. And we saw that last night. There were some nice moments from Lamar on free kicks and Traore getting forward with the ball at his feet, but that sort of incisiveness that Martial brings to the team is really going to be missed.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point, Eric, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Phillips left us for this evening. He's needing some sleep, I would believe, after the hectic day we've had here. But joining us now is our very good friend from Goal.com. It's Mohammed Ali. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. How are you?
Very, very good. It's been a very long first hour. It's going to be even longer when we start talking about Marseille's window, I think. So we'll dig straight into it, Mo. It's been a lot of outgoings. It's been a lot of incomings. I think it's 14 at the moment. I think it's gone up to with the last couple of deals going through. What's your opinion on the window for Marseille?
Well, it's been
stressful,
pretty poor. I mean, it's been very volatile. Players leaving and motivation going down, and then we have a number of Remy Cabella and Lucas Silva and Lassana Diarra, who played really well a few weeks ago against Troyes. So the anticipation has been pretty high, but then looking at the number of players we've been linked with in the last few days and the dearth of really good talented players out there, it's hard to know the caliber of players we're about to sign. We're looking at tonight Paolo Di Cilia from Juventus, who could barely get a game at Parma last year. Mauricio Ayla had a pretty good Copa America, but at club football he's also been a bit off the radar. But then, if Marseille do sign a striker and Eric Lamela, who's been touted, do do join, then it could end very, very well. But that everything depends on the window. We've seen so many rumors fly about, ranging from Wissam Ben Yedder, who could conceivably still join if Toulouse are willing to cede their striker, to the vastly improbable Victor Valdez replacing Steve Mandanda, which obviously was never going to happen. But it's hard to see what we can salvage from this window. Earlier last year, we always knew that June to August 2015 would have been a very difficult transfer window, with Ayew and Gignac leaving, and maybe one or two others, depending on Champions League football. But no one did expect 14 players, or 14 or 15 players, including 8 of last season's first 11, leaving. And looking at our opening campaign, 3 defeats in 4 is pretty difficult to know what the next few weeks or months will have in store for us.
Well, we were just talking about Monaco and their fantastic ability to get plenty of money for some of their wonderful talent, and the reported 80 million euros for Martial is blowing many people's minds. But I think it's a reflection on Marseille that players like Ayew, Gignac have gone for free. How do you really explain that, Mo? It's troubling that quality, experienced players are going for nothing, and yet another club can command enormous fees for their players.
I mean, that's a very good question. It's something that I've been trying to understand for the last few years. I've been a Marseille fan for roughly 8 or 9 years, and we've got a history of underselling players. From Laurent Kana, who today came back to Nantes, and I'm really happy to see him back in the French league. But from the moment that he left, a Marseille captain going to Sunderland for peanuts, for 5-6 million, I think it was at the time, to Valbuena, who started the World Cup, going cheaply, and Lucha Gonzalez, record transfer, 24 million, allowed to return to FC Porto for free. We just seem to have this mentality in history that let's not capitalize on our players. Let them leave, whatever the player wants. I mean, there's a slight correlation between, the likes of Ayew, he served his purpose. He's lived in and played for Marseille all his life. You can't really begrudge him a move. Same for Steve Mandanda. If he was to say, look, I've captained this team for 5 years. I've been through the highs and the lows, and I'm approaching 30, and if I'm going to leave, no one would begrudge him. But the likes of Gignac, Payet, and the rest of these players going for, not that much money, considering also Marseille using the funds to clear debts that Margarita Louis-Dreyfus is not willing to plug. And then just across the south coast, we have Monaco, always in the high double figures, 25 million for Kazawa, 25 million for Abdul, 30 or 35 for Kondogbia, and now 80 for Martial. It's just quite staggering to see, just the golfing class between our directors and the board, and also Monaco's ability and prestige. I think it's all about the standing in the European transfer market. Some clubs are known as tough negotiators. Monaco, Lyon, as much as it pains me to say, Tottenham are one. Real Madrid. Some clubs are known. It doesn't matter your league position. They're known as tough negotiators. And if you do want to do business with them, you've got to play hardball. But Marseille have been known as the last few weeks as a flimsy outfit. Lebrun is always looking to, is trying. I think this whole Dortmund project is his own vanity. He's been much maligned. His predecessors were really good presidents. Pat Diop brought a number of good players to Marseille. Dacier won the league title and 3 league cups at Marseille. And, Lebrun's trying to make his mark. He's trying to shape Marseille in his own image, but that's clearly not working. And we have then a case of an inept president who's going around, weak teams and trying to sell our players or flog our players. His relationship with, I think there's an English agent called William McKay, who bought Barton a few years ago, and who dealt with a number of players with Queen's Park Rangers and others. we shouldn't be aiming for those. Marseille have done well to sign a number of really good players, Lamela, Tolvan, a few years ago, and they're not being sold at the right price, and they're also being sold to teams where they might not be able to serve their purpose and serve their potential pretty well.
That's a very excellent point, and we welcome at this time our very own Brendan McFarlane to the show. Welcome, Brendan.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. We're talking about Marseille at the moment. How would you rate their window?
I think it's been, to be fair, quite mixed. I think there's been a lot of movements that will excite the fans, and I think, as I'm sure Mo would agree, it's quite a delicate time for Marseille fans at the moment, considering what happened with Bielsa and sort of turbulent end to last season. But at the same time, you've got quite exciting players coming in, both sort of sticking to Lebrun's philosophy of trying to bring in French talent, but also we've got the more expanded network where you're seeing exciting Spanish-based players coming in and things like that. But if I could ask Mo a question, it would just be, how damning do you think the Denayer situation has been for Marseille's reputation? Because I actually felt quite sorry for Marseille when I saw that Denayer decided to turn down Marseille after all the efforts that they'd made to try and bring him to the club.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was pretty damning, and had he signed, we would have at least had a really good player who would provide some backup, and maybe even some in the first team place. But it's clear, Marseille against Galatasaray, and Denayer, I think, did a really smart thing by going to both clubs, listening to the proposals that were on the table, touring both facilities. Something that we don't see with players nowadays who make rash decisions, especially on deadline days and at the will of agents. But he made a smart move by going to Istanbul first, checking out what could be offered to him there, and then coming to Marseille, speaking to Lebrun, being shown the velodrome, etc., and then go back home to make a decision. And the decision was, Galatasaray have Champions League football. They have a project. They have a number of exciting players. They've signed, I think, a few players from England, and it's also a player. He wants to experience those. He wants to experience those moments at the top level of European football. Maybe even win the league title this year. And hopefully, if he does go back to Manchester City or moves elsewhere, he has a good basis to build his career in his early 20s. And what could Marseille offer him? Well, right now we're in disarray. We've shot ourselves in the foot in the first month of the season already. The coach he's been looking forward to has gone. Half the team has gone. And it's not surprising to say that he's made a decision. Champions League and no Champions League, it's not really the issue. It's also how stable is the club. And it's pretty damning to see that, a great name, and I've seen many reports and many commentators and other analysts, still speaking of Marseille as a French giant or a heavyweight, but that's, only in name only. If you look at the team currently and the setup currently, it's a far cry from that, and you can't really blame Denayer for thinking, I'm going to go to Istanbul and hopefully that will be the platform to my career. We've already seen how Doria, who made the same mistake last season, how he's been treated. So you can't really blame him.
Very true. I think you made an excellent point there, Mel, about Denayer making sure he toured both facilities. It was almost like American sports-wise. I remember basketball players and American football players in free agency make sure they tour all the facilities and have words with all the managements before they kind of make a decision. And I thought it was in the end, maybe a well-educated move to not go to Galatasaray. But let's not be all doom and gloom for Marseille. If there is a highlight point, Brendan, you first. What do you think might be a highlight point for this transfer window for Marseille?
In terms of players, I think, a lot of, and especially in the French press, there's a lot of ridicule about Diarra's signing. But I think he could turn out to be a very smart piece of business. I think when we saw him in his first match against Troyes, I thought he was almost a revelation. And if he can come onto the game and he can play that holding role and really get to grips with Michel's system, I think Marseille might have the last laugh in that respect. It is hard to look at good points considering the amount of quality that they've lost. But they have brought in a lot of good players. So yeah, I do think there's a lot of positives. I can't wait to get to see Silva play for them. I think Marseille could be the right place for him to be, and from the reports I've read, his entourage were obviously really impressed by what Marseille had to offer. So there's almost quite an interesting contrast between what happened with Denier and what happened with Silva, because he obviously had offers in Spain and he could have stayed in Spain, but he made the jump. He chose to come to Marseille, and he seemed to be impressed with what Le Brun had to offer. So I think that's a strong point for them.
Very quickly before I send the same question to Mo, Eric, you have some news about Marseille and some loans?
Yeah, RMC have clarified that there was some question with Desilly coming in on loan as to whether Lamela could be signed on loan, as there was a limit of 5 players that could arrive on loan. It's 5 French players is the restriction. So there are no loan restrictions in place on foreign players. So both Lamela and Desilly can arrive on loan. Also, Ryan Mendes, right winger from Lille, is set to move to Nottingham Forest on a permanent deal.
Oh, interesting one. That might be because I believe Mikel Antonio is going to West Ham, so they might just have the space to do that. Moving back to Low-M then, Mo, is there any positives you can take from this window?
Yeah, there's some players that we've signed that I'm really looking forward to. Lassana Diarra, we've mentioned, he's been picked up on a free, and even though he's still got a way to come back to his best, but he's shown in the 2 games that he's played in, he's the type of player we need, and really, is a big boost in midfield. He has the quality, and he also has the experience, having played in some of Europe's biggest clubs too. We have a pretty young squad, so that will come in handy. I was very, very happy about Lucas Silva from Real Madrid. I think he's a fantastic player, and the fact that Real Madrid have decided that Marseille is the best place for him to grow his career, and hopefully he will do well this season before going back there next year. I mean, Real Madrid do think highly of him. It's just that there's a number of really, really world-class players ahead of him: Kovacic, Modric, etc. Abou Diaby, if he stays fit, that could be a revelation. And I think if Lamela does go through within the next hour, I think that would be a great signing. He hasn't done well, like John was saying earlier tonight. He's had a bit of a stop-start campaign in England with Spurs, but if you look at his form at Roma, and sometimes with Spurs as well, his wonderful goal in the Europa League last year or the year before stands out. And I think with the type of player that Lamela is, the Premier League could be a very tough and intense league for them. Somewhere a bit lighter, not with insult to the French league, but somewhere a bit lighter and a bit more suited to him. He could really recreate his days from Roma. So a number of deals that we've got here and there have the potential to be really, really good. But again, 14 players going on 15, maybe 16 before midnight. And we've already spoken about Tottenham 2 years ago when they splashed all the Gareth Bale money on 7 or 8 players. How long did it take them to gel? Lamela will be no stranger to that. And Tottenham faded a lot. Marseille have got a whole new team plus more. And they've not played with each other. They barely know each other. The championship has already started. And Europa League, after the international break, after the next 2 weeks, Europa League is back. We play Lyon in the 3rd week of September. There's really not much time to lose, especially given the poor start against mediocre teams. Out of 12 points available, we've only taken 3. There is really no time to lose.
It's certainly been an interesting one, as it always seems to be at Marseille. And like you say, 14, 15, possibly even 16 players through the door is pretty ridiculous in the end of the day. And at least it will remain interesting at the Stade Velodrome this season. I thought we'd move on to chat about some other deals that have interested in Ligue 1 today. Papy Djilobodji to Chelsea is a pretty maybe out of left field even more, not necessarily as much as the Martial one, but for a reported fee of about 2.75 million. He was supposedly close to a transfer to Turkey at one point and linked with more lower Premier League clubs, but he goes to the champions. Brendan, what do you make to that one?
It's come out of nowhere, that one. I mean, it's a really interesting move. I think it's a good move for Chelsea. I think they're getting a really solid and composed defender who'll adapt well to the Premier League. If he'd gone to Sunderland, ironically, I'd love to have seen him play against Diego Costa, because he's the type of player who loves that type of challenge and loves playing against physical centre forwards. So I think he will be a good signing for Chelsea. I don't know if we'll see him play much. I think he'll probably be signed as a squad rotation player, but he's a good prospect. He's only 26. He's got another good few years in him left, and I think it's a bargain of a transfer to sign him for a reported €3 million, I think. It's a bit of an interesting one though, because I think Nantes deserve a lot of praise in this respect. Because on Saturday, the only sort of concrete bid that was in for him came from Trabzonspor, and he looked like he was going there. But a bit like with the Verretou transfer, Kita wanted the best option for the player as well as the club. He wasn't just purely interested in money. He wanted a good offer to come in where he thought the evolution footballistique, the journey was going to continue for the player. And I think Chelsea will be a great move for him. And I think he's the type of signing that Chelsea fans will appreciate when they see him play.
Mo, did you know budget to Chelsea?
I think that's a pretty weird transfer. It's pretty bizarre, and what I can only imagine is Mourinho, after being stopped in his tracks by trying to sign, I think it was John Stones from Everton, and all the major defenders. I think he just took a wild hit on Djilabodji, especially given the ease in which he'd be able to get him. Obviously, Chelsea to Nantes to Chelsea is a major step up. He's in the final year of the contract. The transfer fee wouldn't be too much. I think it just could be the fact that he was the last available defender this late in the window. There's no other explanation for that. And he would just play backup in the League Cup, the FA Cup, maybe the sixth match day in the Champions League, something like that. It's a very bizarre transfer for me because Djilabodji, he's had a good season. The season before last, he was very impressive. But a club like Chelsea, that's just, I think, a major step up for him. Obviously, not to say that he doesn't deserve a move to Chelsea. Obviously, you are as worth as much as whoever is willing to pay for you. And in this case, he's hit a gold mine with the Premier League champions. But it's a bizarre move for me.
I think it's a totally bizarre transfer, but I just think again it's really poignant that he was playing in the fifth tier of French football 5 years ago, and now he's joining Chelsea. It's incredible. It's a bit like the Mahrez story. I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so interested in French football. There are talents out there that just haven't been spotted yet, and then who knows where they can end up.
It's a really good story, isn't it? I think, and there's a number of players you can think about that, and one that definitely springs to mind is Mathieu Valbuena, originally amateur football, although he's had quite a good career, I would have said. Another interesting deal that's gone through today that we spoke a little bit about earlier, Sergi Darder of Malaga to Lyon. Brendan, what do you make to that one?
To be honest, I've not seen the guy play before, but he's definitely the type of player from what I've read that Lyon are looking for. They're looking to bolster up that midfield. I think he seems to be the type of player that likes to take on a challenge from what I've seen him say in the press. And I think we all know that Mr. Aula doesn't spend a lot of money without having a good reason to do so. And I think that's perhaps why he's decided to spend so much on him. Lyon fans seem to be excited by him. He's come from a good club and hopefully he can do a job for them. Another signing that I'm really excited about personally would be Toussaint. I think he's got a great future ahead of him, and I think it's great for Lyon to see two midfielders come out at the same time like that.
And another young midfielder to add to plethora they seem to be bringing in. Mel, what do you think to Dada?
I haven't seen much of Dada either, but from what I've read and the analysis on him, I think Lyon could potentially be getting a good player, and I trust Lyon's judgment with their youth scouting for young players that could potentially be sold on later on. But he appears to have a good range of skills, and also did well for Malaga last season. So again, it could be a move that pays off. He'll compete for a place in the Lyon midfield. But like Brendan said, Toussaint is I think really, really good transfer from them, and I think he'll be going places.
I was trying to swing for someone else to have seen Dade, but it seems like it's only me that's seen him. Never mind. Going back to sort of you mentioning there a good deal that Lyon made for Toussaint. Brendan, what other transfers have really impressed you this season? What's the team that's really done the best bit of business for you?
I've been really interested by Lille's approach to the window so far. I mean, they've lost a lot of good players. Obviously, Kier and Origi left, Gay obviously as well. So they were in a difficult position with Renard coming in and sort of a dull season last year, but I mean I've been quite impressed with the way they've gone about the window. I think Botiat can be a great signing. I think Palo's a good player as well. Obviously they did well with their negotiations to bring in Obadi. I think he can do a great role for them. And Guirassy as well. I think he's a great talent. He didn't have the best under-19s European Championship with France, but I think he's one for the future, and he's one that the Lille fans can get excited about. He's certainly a physical presence, and I think he could be the type of centre forward that we could be seeing scoring 20, 25 goals a season in the future.
That's very interesting. I was worried about Lille's striking issues, and that might be a way of solving it. Mel, have you got a team that have really excelled in this window for you?
I'd say Monaco, but not really on the field, more off it. So the transfers, the revenue they've got, they could definitely get some new players probably in January or next summer. But for me, Rennes, I think the signing of Juan Quintero from Porto, I mean it's probably very close for me to be in the signing of the season for me. This is a player, highly rated across Europe. Scored at the World Cup last year. Played, he's a Colombia international. I'm surprised at how Rennes managed to steal that, and how Porto haven't really capitalized on him. But obviously, this is probably another case of a player with high potential, somehow stumbling. In his career, and again, this could be at Rennes if Montagnier gets his side together and gets his plans together. That could be a really, really good season. Also, they signed Boga from Chelsea on loan. He's highly rated. I think, especially from today's perspective, anyway, they've signed two really, really good players, and I'm looking forward to see Quintero play in Liga.
I think CEO is a great signing for them as well. I think he had a great year last year at Bastia, and obviously he's had a difficult time at Basel before, but hopefully now that he's on a permanent deal at Rennes, he can really get himself going. He's impressed so far. I think he's a good prospect.
I thought the same for the Quintero deal, Mo. When I read that, blimey me. If he can produce the form that we've seen in the past from him, I think Rennes have had an absolute wonder sort of move there that other people will be scratching their heads of why they didn't jump in themselves. I think for myself, one of the teams that I think have done really well is Nice. Obviously, Hatem Ben Arfa came kind of in January, but we're finally getting to see him start, and he's really added wonder to them in the first couple of games. Some absolutely wonderful goals, and I really, really like the signing of Valentin Germain. I mean, he maybe had a bit of a bit part role for Monaco, but he always seemed to be busting along for every move. He'd be making the space in behind. He'd be leading as like at the time at points. He was captain, especially when they were in Ligue 2. And I think I think he's a fantastic signing for Nice to add to Alessandro Plea up front, especially after losing players like Botiet to Lyon. I think they at least replaced what they needed. Whether that'll push them much further up the table, I'm not so sure, but they're certainly going to be entertaining to watch with the options going forward they've got. We will have a quick update from Eric. Now, any pressing news happening at the moment?
Just a couple things. Came in to Lyon, has been made official. Again, he's a French under-19 defensive midfielder who had been on the books in Newcastle. Not much experience, but I think like Toussaint, he's a stronger defensive type midfielder, and could really be something that come off well for Lyon. And Nice, just a clarification on the signing of Ricardo Pereira. He's a right back. GFN had received some incorrect news from Nice Matin. As the player had previously been reported to be an attacking player, but he is in fact a right back.
Interesting. Nice bringing in some extra defensive help as well there. That will hopefully steady that part of the ship. But with you here, Brendan and Mel, we thought we'd move back to sort of another chat about Anthony Martial's potential move to Manchester United. Yes, it's been a fun one tonight on that one. And I've had most of the bartering being a Manchester United fan. But I'll go to you first, Mel. 80 million euros potentially?
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. You can't be paying, the equivalent of a GDP of a small country on a 19-year-old. Martial is highly rated. Don't get me wrong. He's done really well at Monaco, and this season, especially, Monaco have decent strikers, but not a standout figure like they did with Berbatov or Falcao before. I thought Jordan would give him the chance to shine and continue. Maybe this season he could have got 10 to 15 Ligue 1 goals. He's already, got into the France team. Could he have, after a good season, could he have made a late dash to the Euro 2016 squad? The future's bright, and Manchester United are getting a player that is, has huge potential, but potential, how can you measure potential? How can you put a value on it? And will he come good in the end? What we're going to have is now an 80 million, a 19-year-old that costs 80 million, who, Manchester United fans probably wouldn't have heard of, most of them anyway. And his first game at Old Trafford, there's going to be insane pressure on him to complement Rooney, Depay, and the rest, to try and score. If he does lead the line or plays out on the wing, Manchester United fans have already seen, giving Depay a bit of a hard time, because he's not hit the ground running. Will Martial handle the pressure? I'm not sure. And Manchester United is just absolutely ridiculous. 80 million euros 2 seasons ago. Just the evolution of transfer fees. 2 seasons ago, you could have bought Luis Suarez for 80 million, or the very, very top players of world football. 5 years ago, 80 million it was Cristiano Ronaldo's fee, if I'm mistaken, or 6 years ago rather.
I think that was in pounds, yeah.
Yeah, pounds. Obviously, the exchange rate is a bit fluctuated, but obviously, huge transfer fees for the best players in world football. But now, it's a 19-year-old, unproven. Huge potential, but still unproven. People compare him to Thierry Henry, but until we see that happen week in, week out. Monaco was a good Lyon was a good breeding ground. He moved to Monaco for 5 million, and we were shocked at that, but Lyon had to sell before the accounts were filed. And now Monaco to 80 million. They've done a really, really good job, but I don't see this being a good move for him, unfortunately.
Brendan, what do you think?
I think he could be a brilliant signing. I don't want to say it'd be a brilliant piece of business, because I think there's only one winner in that regard. I think Monaco have got Man United where they wanted them. They didn't need to sell them. They've got a good replacement, in my opinion, in Carrillo already in their squad ranks. So once Martial goes, he'll slot in. But I think it's Monaco, as you said earlier, Mo, have had a great window, and I think this sort of is the icing on the cake. They've managed to squeeze as much as they want out of Man United, and I think it's a great piece of business on their part. I think he's a good player. He's got pace. He's strong. He's developed well. I mean, I know people criticise the Henry comparison, but fairly. But in fairness, he did start out on the wing. He's moved into the middle, a bit like Henry. And also, he obviously dealt with pressure well when he got the snub from Lyon and moved to Monaco. He established himself there. And I think on the big stage, he's proven to be a good player. I thought he had a great couple of games against Juventus in the Champions League. And I mean, that's the thing about potential. It can go one or two ways. I mean, it could be a great signing. It might not. It's tough to say. I also, personally, I even think it's maybe a bit premature to see him called up for the France team at the moment. I think there are other strikers around that aren't in that squad list that could be. And it's an interesting one. But I mean, Deschamps is a good judge of player. He obviously thinks he's ready for France. So who's to say he's not ready for Man United?
I mean, absolutely, I think. But with regards to international football, I mean, France, they're playing more or less friendlies till next summer, and he's the future. So why not put him in the game against Armenia or whoever they're playing? International friendlies. Just to be around the national team players in Clairefontaine, just to be in the atmosphere, that could really help his development. Doesn't actually have to be on the pitch. But then playing week in, week out, expecting to be named on the starting lineup and to be performing at a very, very high standard, in the tough Champions League group I think that they have, in the Premier League, which is unrelenting, Manchester United are expected to finish at least in the top 2 or 3 this season, maybe win a couple. So, the pressure will be immense. And he was on don't get me wrong, Martial was on a top trajectory, This season he will do well for Monaco. Next season maybe be the star man of Monaco, the same way Lacazette was in 2013, 14, and now. And then get a taste of be on the top scoring charts of Liga, be named as a lead striker for the national team, and then maybe get your 30 million plus transfer. 9 goals in 35 appearances in Liga. For Monaco, one season where he's been, at least in domestic terms, in the consciousness, doesn't really constitute an 80 million move for me. But Manchester United, this is the world we live in right now. It's only going to get worse next season with the TV deals. Manchester United obviously have 80 million to burn, and why not? It's better to pay 80 million for a potential signing that may come good, and maybe a long-term 5-10 year signing. You never know, and rather than just leave in the bank, So we'll see how that one goes.
Another thing to say about Monaco in that regard is that in relation to Man United is the fact that I've no understanding whatsoever as to why they didn't make a move for Abdenur. They might have made a move that didn't come into press or wasn't official, but they definitely have a weakness at centre back, and I think if you'd even spent half that 80 million on Abdenur, it would have been a great signing for them. I think he'd be a great player for Valencia, but I think he could have been an excellent addition to the Premier League.
Mm-hmm. And there was talk of Pedro and all these other top-class players that Manchester United could have got for far less than 80 million. I would actually say when there were rumours at the turn of August of Tottenham trying to get Martial for 25 million euros, I thought that was a bit steep. But clearly, you are worth however much someone is willing to pay for you at the end of the day.
Or how desperate Manchester United
are. Absolutely.
I think there's a great mention. I've seen it retweeted by Sam Tyre tonight. At Pash021 mentioned that for 80 million you could have got Antoine Griezmann, who it's difficult to compare. And I think you mentioned his mentality then, Mo. His cauldron of fire could be a home debut against Liverpool in a week or two. So it's a tough one to justify. I think the real positive I can take from Martial that will benefit Manchester United is from what you could see last season is his play on the wing and then moving into a central position means that he's willing to challenge that space in behind defenders that maybe at this moment in time Manchester United are lacking. And I think that it's a lot of money. It's a hell of a lot of money, but at the same time, in the strange world we live in, it's not an enormous amount for Manchester United to pay anymore. which feels weird, but it's not an incredible amount for a team to pay. But absolutely full credit to Monaco for getting, if they've got an €80 million fee, what a terrific piece of business they've done. I mean, they've got the ready-made replacements, like Brendan has said in Carrillo, and it's terrific business for them. And reinvesting that in potentially youth players or reinvesting that within the squad in January next summer to really, really push PSG with an interesting, young, vibrant squad. I think they've done terrific, and they've had a terrific window
absolutely.
as well.
I mean, I saw about half an hour ago that the signing, the fee, is so huge. You know, it's equivalent to Lille's entire season budget, and that's the 5th highest in the French league.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely incredible what Manchester United are paying for a 19-year-old. I still can't imagine or comprehend this. A 19-year-old that hasn't won the World Cup or the Champions League, or hasn't scored 40+ goals, or is a top scorer, or has won titles, just off sheer potential. But Monaco, I think Monaco can be really, really happy with the business that they've done this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, really hope, not just personally, but I really enjoy Martial. Like I've mentioned earlier tonight, my prediction of him being Liga top scorer is unfortunately out the window, so he's made me look like a fool. But I do look forward to watching him at Manchester United, should he join before the end of the transfer window. Mose, you're heading off now,
Yep.
as I believe that. Thank you for joining us again.
Thanks very much for having me.
Everyone who's
Nice
listening,
speaking to you.
that's join him. Follow him on Twitter @MohamedAli_93. Always a great read on anything Marseille. Thank you for joining us, Matt.
Thanks.
Excellent. Right. Before we move on, Eric, have you got any later news to fill us in with about half an hour to go?
Things are slowing down a little bit. Lille are trying to capture Lenny Nongi, so it's just been made official on a 4-year deal. The former Caen attacker is going to join Les Dogs for a fee of €1 million, and Lille have also signed Ivorian youngster Davila Baloua from Abidjan, which is a club that is based in Ivory Coast. So Lille perhaps not feeling they have the correct combination up top with the likes of Guirassy and Guillaume, and trying to improve on that.
Very interesting. It does sound like it's slowing down as we get to the end of the evening. But Brendan, we're going to move on now to Ligue 2 matters. It's been an interesting window as well in the second division of French football. Who for you, Brendan, has really strengthened their opportunity to get a real shot at promotion to League this season?
Well, I think if you look at form so far, it would be hard to ignore how well Metz have done. On the pitch, they look brilliant. Off the pitch, it's been tough for them, obviously losing Sarr to Marseille, Busman to Mainz, and also losing Maiga as his loan spell ended. But we've brought in 11 or 12 players, quite a lot of players from Portugal, loan signings, some permanent. And I think if one signing that stands out for me so far would be Hamza Saki. He had a brilliant season last year at Châteauroux, and I think he's the type of player that could make the difference for them. He plays as a number 10 behind the striker. He's got a lot of flair, a lot of creativity, and he can make things happen. And he had a great debut last week against Evian. He played about 70 minutes. And he was really active. He was always calling for the ball, and I think he could be a big player in their promotion race. In terms of other promotion contenders, I'd say Nancy have had a good window, mainly for the fact that they've been able to hold on to players. I think Remy Walter is a brilliant midfielder. There was a lot of talk about him going to Nantes, but I think wage demands got in the way of that one, and also Clément Longley, the defender, and Arnaud Lusuamba was also like moving away. They've managed to hold on to all three of those players. They're great prospects for the future, definitely with Ligue 1 credentials. And I think they've also had a good window in terms of players that they've brought in, because they brought in Pedretti, who's already a fan's favourite. He brings in a lot of experience to that midfield. And also they re-signed Michael Chrétien after 4 years away from the club, and he scored on Friday night, and he's really seems to have strengthened up the back four. He plays at right back, and he's also capable of going forward and scoring. And they also had a great result on Friday night when they beat Clermont. So I think both of those sides have been busy, but in a good way.
I think you make an excellent point about Remy Waiter's move to not ending in an odd way, that wage demands have stopped him going to a Ligue 1 club at this late stage. It does seem very strange that a player who is highly touted and is bound to make the move up at some point has sort of delayed it for a year, at least 6 months longer, just to get a little bit more money out of the pockets. There has been one big deal really going to England this evening. Idriss Saidi from Clermont Foot.
That's a really interesting signing. I didn't see that coming at all, actually. He moved to Clermont last season on a free transfer, and he really hit the ground running from the first week. He's good. He's a powerful player. One concern I'd have for him is the fact that he's 6'2", and he's a strong guy. He's good on the ground, but we all know about the Championship, and we know how aerially dominant it can be, and how centre forwards often need to be strong in the air. And people out there can correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't recall Sadie scoring a header since he joined for Clermont. Obviously, he picked up a really kind of tragic knee injury about December last season, which ruled him out. So in that regard, it's also a bit of a gamble for Cardiff, because it was a really serious knee injury, and it was one that at the time doctors thought could have ruled him out for longer than what it did. But thankfully, he came back last week in the Coupe de la Ligue, and he scored a penalty on his return. So he's obviously an ambitious guy, and a guy with a strong head on his shoulders. So hopefully, he can make a difference for Cardiff. It does seem to be a really interesting transfer, and as I said, it wasn't one that I was expecting to happen at all.
Well, it's an interesting point you make that he hasn't scored a single header, because I certainly remember this weekend that Cardiff's first goal was definitely a header from Kenwyne Jones.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's a little bit of a worry that if they are a team that like to put the ball in the box from wide areas, he needs to maybe get his head on his shoulders properly. What do you think to the business done by sides from Ligue 2 that were promoted last season, especially after Angers' strong start?
Yeah, I think in terms of Angers, I think they could probably set the benchmark for most promoted teams to Ligue 1 in the future. I think they've gone about their business superbly, and in a professional manner too. They sold Bouffal obviously in January, and he went on to have a brilliant season with Lille, and I'm sure he'll have a great season this year. And he was a star for them until he left, but after that, the focus moved on to Jonathan Kodjia, who since then's moved to Bristol City. And even though they lost two key players, that freed up a lot of wage costs. And with the increased budget that they got, they've invested really wisely, bringing in I think about 12 or 13 players. And what really impresses me about Angers is their ability to spot players playing in the lower leagues and to make them perform on the top level. And I think Ndoye and Traoré are perfect examples of that. They've had a great start to the season for Angers, and I think full credit to the club for reinvesting whatever money they made back in so well. Another player to watch out for, I'd say, for Angers would be Sissoko. He was signed from the 3rd Division, and La Blatinière, who's the head of scouting at Angers, is tipping him for great success. So they're definitely a team to watch. Also, Troyes, I think they've done well in keeping Jesse P and Corentin Jean. I think they're players who can make a difference for them. And although Troyes obviously have had quite a complicated start to the season, I think part of that has been for the fact that Carol left the club. He played left back for them last season before moving to Galatasaray, and he wasn't just purely a left back. He was also a leader on the pitch, And to replace him, the club brought in Mavinga, and he's had a difficult start to life in Ligue 1. But hopefully, if he comes onto a game, Troyes will be able to get back to playing the type of football that they played last season, because they really were impressive. In terms of Gazalek, I think it's going to be very tough for them, because last year they based most of their success on performing well at home against teams that didn't travel well. They didn't do that well away themselves either, but obviously with the step up in Ligue 1, you've got players like Lacazette and Fekir who can play anywhere, can score anywhere, and I don't think they're going to be able to base much success at home this season. They've signed players like Lemoine and Mangani to give them a bit more experience in midfield, because players like Labrie and Mailly, who had good seasons for them last year, just really haven't been able to assert themselves at a higher level. So hopefully players like that can help them to sort of find a bit more stability and a bit more. I would say that no matter who Gazalek bring in, it's going to be a tough season for them.
Yeah, and I think we always thought it would be a pretty difficult one for them to get through. Going on to sort of players that traded Ligue 1 this season for Liga, who do you think will impress, and who has been real value for money for you?
I think first of all, a really interesting deal that happened today was Mikel Lubian signing for Nice. He's a good centre forward. He started out at Sedan as a right back, but he's evolved into a really dangerous centre forward, and I think when he plays, you can tell that he's an intelligent striker, and I think part of that is down to the fact that as a player that started as a defender, he knows how the defender's mind works. And you often find him taking up space that you would seem to think was a bit unconventional, but it always works out for him. He's a dangerous player in the 6-yard box. He can score with his head. He can score with both feet. And I think he could be one to watch out for, because we all know that Nice have been a bit lacking in attack, and I think he really could bring them something special up front. Another player that's moved to Ligue 1 from Ligue 2 is Kevin Malcuit. He was rumoured to be linked to West Ham. I'm a Chamois Niortais fan myself, so I was quite sad to see him leave Niort, but I think we all knew that was always going to happen. He signed for Saint Etienne, and I think he could probably replace Francois Clerc at right back. He's a really good talent, formed by Monaco's academy, and I think he'll relish the chance to play in Ligue 1, because when he's at Monaco, he'll never played Ligue 2, so I think he's definitely one to watch out for. He's quite an offensive full-back, but he also likes to stick in when he's playing at the back. He's quite strong. And interestingly, he's also the brother of former Marseille player Samir Malcuit, so it'll be interesting to see if he can do better than his brother did in Ligue 1, because obviously he had quite a complicated spell at Marseille.
Just a little. That might be the best way to put that one. What about players that have come down then to Ligue 2? What's a real steal for a Ligue 2 side?
Well, I think Le Havre have to be one of the challengers this year. I think tonight many people might have missed the game because of the dealings that have been going on, but Le Havre really impressed tonight when they won at Lens. They won by 4-0, and one of the goal scorers tonight was Mathieu Duhamel, and obviously he had quite a tough spell last year. He started at Caen, got loaned out to Evian, and it didn't really seem to click for him as a centre forward in Ligue 1. But in Caen's promotion push in the 2013-2014 season, he was always present, and then he was always scoring for Caen. So I think that's a really good bit of business for Le Havre. I think he'll replace Le Bien. He's a similar type of player in the fact that he's a forceful centre forward who can score with the ball on the ground and can score with the ball in the air. So I think he's a good signing. But they've also signed Grégoire Puel from Nice after quite a complicated spell there. So he brings a lot of experience to the side. I think that showed tonight. They look a lot more composed when they have Duhamel and Puel playing together in the team. Good experience for a side that have been known to bring through a good youth talent. So I think they're interesting signings.
So just to break in here, sorry, Brendan. It looks like the transfer of Lamela to Marseille is being held up. Spurs want to have a replacement lined up for the player before they agree to loan or sell him to Marseille. So the Lamela transfer is not happening at the latest moment.
Which is pushing it a little bit, isn't it? I think that's a classic Daniel Levy, latest to the party. We'll make sure we've got potentially a replacement. I don't think they really need one, but thank you for that, Eric. Definitely some news that we might have to catch up with at the very end of the show as the window shuts. I have to agree with you there, Brendan. I think Duhamel going back to Ligue 2 for Le Havre will be a really quality sort of signing. When he was at Caen in the 13-14 season, he was really integral to them going up, and it's a shame that he had never really sort of got a grip to Liga, much like the rest of the Caen squad did, especially in that spell. I can't remember if it was just before or just after Christmas where they were on an absolute tear, but hopefully hopefully they've found a new home at Le Havre and help them get promoted, as well as I think Puel will be a good signing for them as well. We're going to get a little bit philosophical, I think, for the last 15 minutes of the transfer window. We're going to ask some maybe conceptual questions, you might say. It's been a bit of a pillaging of Liga talent in this summer, from especially English clubs, Brendan. Does that force clubs now to focus on youth talent rather than trying to bring players in through the transfer window in the future?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think the French football in general can be very proud of the fact that the league at the moment is standing up as one of the best places in the world where youth talent is being brought through. And I think people in England could probably learn a lot from what's going on at French clubs. I think you've got to look at the fact that French players are schooled together, they're brought through academies together, they live together, and I think the whole system in place in France is sort of more beneficial to youth development. I think we'd like to think that, as you said earlier, this money that's coming into the English game can be reinvested in terms of youth formation, and I think that's going to have to be key, because even though at the minute with the limitless amount of money clubs that Man United and Man City have, I think it is getting a bit tiresome, and I don't know how sustainable this is with EPL clubs going around grabbing the best talent. I think eventually fans are going to start to want to see young players coming into squads, and personally, as a Celtic fan myself, I know we've not had the biggest amount of money to spend on players, but when we have bought players as opposed to forming young talent, I think it's not the same feeling when you see a young player come in and to do his best for your side, to get success for your side after coming through as a youth product. There's no better feeling than seeing that happen. So I think we will see the Premiership moving towards that type of philosophy.
Well, I think it's an interesting point you make about fans collectively. Being a Manchester United fan myself and growing up with that class of '92 fantastic youth players coming through all at once, it's something that's down to happen again in England, but there's the opportunity, strangely enough, in France for that to happen now. I mean, we discussed earlier about with Eric when we were talking about Lyon, about the players they'd sold a couple of years ago, Alassane Pléa, Anthony Martial as well, obviously, to Monaco. That you consider that with Lacazette and Fekir, and the potential strike force there is mind-boggling. The worry really, and this leads on to really my next question, that being able to keep these talents for any period of time is going to get harder and harder with the amount of money, especially the Premier League's getting. The Bundesliga have a fair amount themselves, especially in the top clubs. Is there a worry that with Monaco as well going out of the Champions League in the qualifying stages, the coefficient might go down next summer to Russia potentially if certain things don't go the way, say PSG don't make it out the group stages, or Lyon? Is there a worry that Liga, even though it will be a real positive to bring loads of youth talent through, is there a worry that they'll be left behind a little bit?
I think that's a very strong point. I mean, it's exciting when you see a player like Martial come through, or Fekir, and you see them coming into to a club at a young age and playing regularly, scoring regularly, making a difference. But I mean, we're now getting to the stage where Martial's had one decent season and he's been snapped up.
One half the season. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean, he
played 1,800 minutes last year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a worry. I don't know how we can resolve that. I don't know what realistically can happen. But I think you've got to look at too. We don't want France to end up like Portugal, where talents are formed and where players move straight away. But I mean, you've got to think that if people are watching the Premier League and they realise that all these talents like Diafra, Mahrez are coming from Ligue 1, Ligue 2, surely they've got to take it upon themselves to think, right, I want to watch French football. I want to see what's going on. I mean, maybe French clubs won't be able to compete in the long term, but there's got to be a short-term advantage as well. I think the work that TV channels have made recently across Europe to put more focus on French football has been good. And I honestly do think that there is a growing audience. Whether that translates in making clubs bigger, I don't know if that'll happen, but it is good to hear people, just normal football fans who don't have an attachment to France or to French football in particular, getting more informed about French football and learning more. So I think there could be a development in that stage.
And hopefully we'll benefit.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be a commercial benefit from that as well.
Yeah. Eric, I'll let you jump in here with 10 minutes to go, really. What do you think the transfer window sort of has held for Ligue 1? Is it a worry? I mean, if you look at the likes of the Eredivisie, not to down that one, but it's essentially a youth league now. And you look at Portugal, like Brendan was mentioned, it's essentially a growing talent and then selling them on and having one or two clubs that do okay in the Champions League. What do you think?
I mean, I think that's true, but I would point to both Portugal and the Netherlands as being two radically different situations. For one thing, the influx of particularly African immigration to France and the fact that French is spoken throughout a lot of Africa means that France is drawing from a larger potential pool of players than either the Netherlands or the Portuguese league. So, on the one hand, there's more of if France becomes a quote-unquote feeder league, I think that they still have an ability to operate within that sphere of the top five. Also, third-party ownership is not as much of a problem as it has proved for a lot of Portuguese teams. We've seen that, being a hang-up for the likes of Benfica and Porto in recent years in terms of trying to get deals done for their players. So, I think that France, with its tighter financial regulations, is better positioned to be a sustainable fourth or fifth best league in Europe. In terms of worldwide fan support and money, I can't see them, really overtaking the Bundesliga or La Liga or the EPL. But that being said, for a long time the Bundesliga was ranked below Ligue 1, and there didn't seem to be much of a way up. But through thoughtful planning and the terms of the authorities there, the league, with a focus on young players, built itself back up. And yes, you had Bayern Munich being a superpower, but Paris Saint-Germain's positioned in a similar way. I don't see this as being a negative. I feel like if you look at a club like Nantes, for example, receiving quite a lot of money in the offseason, but then again, they're also bringing in players of a higher quality, the likes of a Sig Thorson, a Yusuf Sabali on loan. These aren't world-class players, but they're still, showing an ability to Adrian, the youngster from Brazil, they're still showing an ability to grow the club and, I think put the club in a better position going forward than perhaps they necessarily had been.
Yeah, and also when you speak about Nantes, you've got the best of both worlds, because you're talking about the club growing in size of players they bring in, but you've also got young players like Dubois who are making a name for themselves. So hopefully if you can have a sort of hybrid structure where you've got the youth talent developing, but you've also got players from other leagues being attracted to the club, we could see some sort of strength being built there.
Yeah, I think Nantes is a very clear example, and I think, Eric, you touched a very good point there about France's links to Africa. You could also link that to Portugal's connections in South America, but you make an excellent point that the third-party ownership was a real issue there. I think that's something FIFA's been cracking down on in the last year or so. So that's going to be less of a problem in the future. But it is difficult to see how France sort of get out of that hole. A lot of their players have left for England, but we'll talk a little bit positively towards the end and about the window as a whole. Brendan, I'm trying to phrase a question here, but it's what from Liga. Who's your favourite player who's gone? What do you think the best piece of business by an English club is for a Ligue 1 player, if that's phrased in the right way?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
You get the gist. That's all right.
Yeah.
It's been a long night.
Yeah, sure. But no, definitely I think it would be Amavi, due to the fact that, I mean, left back is such a particular position. And I mean, I watch a lot of French football myself, down to the Nacional, and you rarely see such a quality left back standing out. I mean, obviously there's a lot less left footers in the game, and there's a lot less left footers that want to play in that position as kids. So I mean, I think he could be a really top signing for them. I think he's proven already that he's adjusted well to the Premiership. I don't think they paid that big a fee for them, in fairness. Considering how young he is and considering the particularity of that position, I think Aston Villa have got themselves a brilliant deal in Amavi, and I definitely think he could be the type of player that we see replacing Ever at left back one day in a national setup.
I think it's hard to argue with that one. Eric, have you got a favourite transfer from Liga to the English League?
I think we have to go back to the Aston Villa. I think Idrissa Gueye is really a class player, and I think that the way he was used at Lille was often a little bit too negative. And I think he's a player who has a good shooting ability. He's a fairly strong dribbler as well. If he's given a little bit more freedom there under Tim Sherwood, I think he could really blossom this season to be a really dynamic box-to-box midfielder.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with what I think might even be the deal of the Premier League this summer. I think the free transfer of Andre Ayew to Swansea is unbelievable business. I mean, I did a bit of a write-up on the site about his transfer and transfers in general to England, and if you take the 90k a week that reportedly he's been paid by Swansea for I think it's a 4-year contract, a 5-year contract. It roughly works out to about 9 million, 10 million net. And if you think that he's had a fantastic start, which isn't surprising at all, but in a year they could sell him for what, £20 million?
Yeah,
and that's,
exactly.
They've paid what, maybe 4 million for the year for his contract, and then it beggars belief that it's fantastic business by whoever managed to convince him to the club. I think in the first place, obviously Bafétimbi Gomis would have helped a considerable amount, but I think that's sensational business, and I think he's already shown how good he is in the Premier League. He was fantastic in Ligue 1 as well, but I don't think you can argue with that. Eric, sorry, I'm going to jump back to you very quickly. We've got only a couple of minutes left of the window in France. Is there anything bubbling? Is there anything on Lamela or any late deals?
Just one clarification. Ryan Mendes's move to Nottingham Forest is a loan with an option to buy, not a permanent deal.
Right, so it does seem like we're many more coming through. That's an interesting signing, though, where Ryan Mendes never really did anything spectacular at Lille. Brendan, what do you think to that move?
It's an interesting transfer. Hopefully he can realise his potential, because I think when I watched him at Le Havre, he looked like a brilliant player. And when he moved to Lille, I was excited about him in the same way that I was excited about Boufal moving from Angers to Lille. So hopefully we can see the best out of him in that league. It's a tough championship though. There's a lot of good teams that side in that league. Sorry, and he's moving to a side that aren't in the best position. So I mean, the pressure will be on him to hit the ground running from the start, and hopefully he can.
And I think that pressure will be added, much like we mentioned earlier, that I believe Mikel Antonio is going to West Ham United, and replacing the goals that he's produced and scored himself is very, very important. I'm following Twitter at the moment that it looks like the Lamela dealer might be off. We've not got any confirmation yet of any kind, but it looks like But because Daniel Levy has left that to the last minute to try and find a replacement, Eric, what do you think? What do you think to that? If that is true?
I mean, I don't see a need for another winger. You already have Cabella's been used in the wing so far. You have Alessandrini, you have Sarr, you have Nkudu. There's enough wide players on that team. If you're gonna, if the underlying thought there is to buy him after the season, I'd rather see that money spent on a backup striker. I think it's a needless buy that Leprun is just trying to do to appease the fans for whatever reason. I'm not impressed with the thought process there.
Yeah, and it was a pretty late time to try and get that kind of deal done with someone like Daniel Levy, who is known to be incredibly. I think the right word for it might be shrill with deals, especially at a late stage of a transfer window. But it is 11 p.m. here in England GMT, and that means it's midnight in France. So the window is officially shut. As we say that, it always seems like the window carries on for a couple of hours more as deals are officially sort of signed off. The paperwork would have been transferred. So let's talk about very quickly. We'll have a couple of minutes here about the transfer window itself. Brendan, it's been a hectic one again, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been. I think it's probably been one of the busiest windows in France in recent years. So much has happened, so many unexpected twists and turns. But I think having the window has been good for French football since it started. There's a renewed focus put upon the league due to the fact that so many teams have talented players that attract interest from England. So yeah, I think it's been an interesting one. To be honest, my favourite deal of the window so far, I would say, was probably Beauvu's move to Lyon, because I think it contradicts what was said earlier when we said that the best French talents are moving to England straight away. He's a guy who's now played 5 or 6, maybe even 7 senior seasons in French football, and despite how well he played last season, he stayed in France. He's moved to one of France's biggest clubs, and I think that's a positive transfer for French football.
And what a goal he scored at the weekend!
Oh yeah,
I have to say that it's a fantastic finish. And just as I'm reading here that late on, Lenny Nangis, I don't know if we've mentioned it, has joined Lyon for a reported €1 million. That's a interesting signing from Con. Eric, what do you think to that one?
Yeah, I think it's great. Nangis isn't exactly known for his goals, but he does have a good engine and motor. And I think that he's less of a jinky player than jinky trick-driven player than the likes of Botiak and Buffon. I think he could give a different look in the way that Lille are using that 4-3-3 so far this season. So yeah, I think that's a good signing. He's a different option. It's a good price.
It's a very interesting one, and deals will go through. So if you are listening still tonight, feel free to follow our Transfer Deadline Day blog. It will still be running for a good couple of hours, I believe, or so. So follow the link in the description. Follow our Twitter feed as deals sort of move through. There's obviously still until 6 p.m. GMT for the English window, so moves from French clubs to English clubs can still happen. Thank you to Eric, and thanks to Brendan as well for joining us this evening.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, please follow him on Twitter. It's at ismisbrendon, MISE, and I'm just getting a quick tweet just before we leave that an agent has already told us not to go to bed yet from our official Twitter feed. So make sure you don't switch yourselves off yet. She's supposedly worked on a Campos deals and Lamela deals in the past, so there might be light at the end of the tunnel for Marseille yet. But the transfer window, at least officially, although it does seem to drag on for a little while, is closed, and that's also the end for this bumper edition of the Get French Football News Show. Thanks to all the guests that joined us, to Jonathan, Joseph, to Philip Bargiel and Mohammed Ali as well. Thank you all for tuning in, and I think it's about time we all got some rest. Good night, everyone.